Written by Sugumi Ohba and illustrated by Takeshi Obata, Death Note is the wildly successful manga series which has inspired an equally successful anime adaptation, and not to mention several movie adaptations. The story follows a teenager called Light Yagami, a very intelligent and hardworking student who aspires to one day join the police force just like his father. He has a strong sense of justice and has studied the criminal justice system. He has also helped his father with some of his cases. For Light, a typical day at school is interrupted when he glances out of the window while in class and sees a notebook fall from the sky. This notebook is of course the Death Note. The first rule written on the first page inside the Death Note states that the human whose name is written in this note shall die. Light begins to take the law into his own hands and serves out his warped form of justice. He begins killing criminals by writing their names into the Death Note. People begin to believe that there is a divine entity doing God's work by killing murderers, rapists, and criminals who have done enough to deserve death in their eyes. Light begins to gain a following. His followers call this mysterious series of deaths the acts of a god called Kira, which is literally a Japanese take on the word killer. Light is the mysterious Kira known the world over. He is apparently doing God's work by ridding the world of scum who have slipped through the cracks of the criminal justice system with lenient sentences, or they may have even pleaded insanity and gotten away with their crime. This great premise only gets better when the world's greatest detective, who has solved many unsolvable cases, decides to take on the Kira case. Just like Kira, this detective's real identity is unknown. This great detective is known by his alias, L. The introduction of L causes the story to quickly take a turn. Death Note develops into a cat and mouse game between Kira and L, two geniuses up against each other, patiently waiting for the other to slip up and make a wrong move which will cost them their life. Death Note has been received positively by the majority of its viewers or readers. Having a large fan base, I want to discuss if all of this love for this series is warranted. What are the pros and cons of the series? Ultimately concluding if this series is or is not overrated. Death Note first appeared in the pages of Weekly Shonen Jump on December 1st, 2003. The manga ran for 12 volumes, concluding on the 15th of May 2006. Following the conclusion of the manga, an anime series spanning 37 episodes aired from October 2006 to June 2007. I personally began watching Death Note in the spring of 2007. The buzz surrounding the series at the time was incredible. Death Note has been praised for handling the themes of morality and justice with the respect that they rightfully deserve. The show's narrative is incredibly gripping and suspenseful. There are moments while watching the anime that really leave you guessing. The story was incredibly difficult to predict. Death Note has been described as an intense psychological warfare between its protagonists. Light and L have both been written with a lot of depth. Their every action is meaningful. This is reflected by the popularity of these two characters. It has cemented their rivalry as one of the best throughout all of anime and manga. The series was published in a magazine which released manga like Dragon Ball, Yu Yu Hakusho, and Fist of the North Star. It's a testament to Death Note to see it thrive in a magazine that primarily published battle manga and comedic gag manga for young boys. Gripping to fans of all ages, there is no doubt that the series has been well received by audiences and critics alike. Having spoken briefly about Light and L, I want to talk about a few key characters that feature within the show. What makes them worth investing your time into? The main protagonist of Death Note is Light Yagami. He has several qualities which make him an interesting character to follow. Light excels in mapping out scenarios in his mind, planning the steps out methodically for whatever strategy he wishes to play. He is very perceptive, often noticing the subtle nuances in people's speech and behavior. He is really intelligent and he is constantly praised by his elders for this very trait. This does lead to him developing some hubris within his personality. This excessive pride and confidence in his own abilities manifest when Light begins using the Death Note. His sense of justice is twisted by the powers of the Death Note. His excessive self-confidence and inflated ego leads to him thinking that the current criminal justice system is flawed. He determines the world to be rotten. With the aid of the Death Note, Light aims to rid the world of scum. Criminals who get away with little to no punishment are exactly who Light aims to rid the world of. His ambitions lead to him wanting to fulfill his dream of a new world, free of criminals and injustice, and those who he deems worthy to live will survive. Once this ambition is fulfilled, Light will become the self-proclaimed god of the new world. A different perspective on morality and justice is front-run by the detective L. On first glance, L appears to be very messy and disorganized, but his disheveled appearance is incredibly deceptive. Despite his appearance, L is in fact very intelligent. His abilities are called into question by people who have the privilege of meeting him. L is a highly skilled detective. His deductive reasoning skills are second to none. To protect his identity, L uses several aliases. He has solved multiple investigations which were thought to be unsolvable. He became a detective at a young age and very quickly earned the reputation as the world's greatest detective. L second guesses everything he is presented with, making him very meticulous and analytical. One of the many tactics that L uses is misinformation and misdirection. He often gives his suspects a false sense of security, letting them become careless and overconfident, falsely revealing to them that he suspects them the least culpable, when in fact he is almost certain that they are guilty. L and Light both share a strong sense of justice. While L's beliefs are conventional, Light's have been corrupted by the powers of the Death Note. Ryuk is the Shinigami or God of Death who dropped the Death Note into the human world. He hoped for someone to find it. He does this after becoming bored with his uneventful life in the Shinigami realm. When Light picks up the Death Note and uses it to rid the world of injustice, this entertains Ryuk. He finds Light very interesting, particularly the way that Light manipulates the fixed rules of the Death Note into his own favor. Light even discovers abilities of the Death Note that Ryuk did not even know existed. When it comes to Ryuk's stance on what Light is doing, he is impartial. He does not care about the nuances of Light's psychological battle with L, nor does he care about how Light chooses to use the Death Note. He does not assist Light in any way. He even goes as far as to withhold information from Light and only thinks of assisting Light if it benefits him. Ryuk doesn't care if Light lives or dies. He is just an observer, simply there to relieve his boredom. Despite being intelligent, Ryuk is easily manipulated by Light. He does this through Ryuk's love for apples. Ryuk compares his addiction to apples like that of a human who is addicted to cigarettes and alcohol. After L deduces that Kira resides within Japan, he forms the Japanese task force who work with L to investigate the Kira case. Soichiro Yagami, Light's father, leads the task force. The other members who work with L are Watari, who is L's assistant, Matsuda, Mogi, Ukita, Aizawa, and a few others. The characters in Death Note are purposefully there. Nobody feels out of place. Each person plays a role within the greater story. It also does an excellent job of giving characters with smaller roles enough depth to keep you invested into them. Death Note discusses some serious moral themes, whether if it is right to kill someone without allowing them time to repent or redeem themselves. Wouldn't the person killing the evildoers become evil themselves, even if their intentions are good? Light believes he is capable of this monumental task of passing judgment onto others, thinking that if he kills all the evil in this world, it will result in a more lawful society. However, Ryuk says something to Light which really resonates with me whenever I go back and watch the series. He says if Light was to kill all the evildoers in this world, then that would leave Light as the only evildoer left in his perfect world. The conflicting morality that Light's twisted ideology presents is fascinating. How someone so intelligent and full of promise was able to be corrupted and have his sense of justice warped through obtaining power via the Death Note. It is totally delusional that Light thinks he can decide if someone is deserving of life or not. Despite them doing wrong in the life they have lived, who is Light to decide if they are beyond redemption? Being a series that discusses morality and themes of right and wrong, it features a lot of symbolism and even some biblical references and imagery, especially within the anime. Color is also used within the anime to emphasize the differing ideologies of Light and L. Light is colored with a red overtone whenever he has evil intentions. The color red psychologically evokes feelings of rage and anger. Personally, I also think of the red coloring on Light to symbolize the blood that is on Light's hands after all of the people that he has killed. Light is contrasted with L, who appears with blue overtones, the color blue evoking feelings of calmness and relaxation. Wisdom and tranquility is also associated with the color blue. These are both qualities that L embodies. The blue is a harsh and obvious clash against Light's red. L has good intentions, which are represented by the color blue, while Light has evil intentions, which are emphasized by the color red. Prior to using the Death Note, I always see Light as what he is, an intelligent young boy who is coming to grips with the world that he is living in. It saddens me when I see the innocent and bright-eyed Light change. The red color quickly takes over him as he begins using the Death Note. It emphasizes the corruption, and his eyes begin to have a red gleam. The innocent boy with good intentions is no more. He is now a false god with a corrupt ideology. What a jump in personality and character. The complex story of Death Note respectfully handles its serious themes. The anime adaptation improves upon its source material by including complementary symbolism and historical references. The anime is also accompanied with a soundtrack which complements the characters and the story so well. Each character who is central to the plot has their own theme song. Through the tone and tempo of the music, it incredibly matches the personality of the characters. For example, Light has two themes. The first theme is called Light's theme. This song has a tone of innocence and high tempo. It sounds optimistic and hopeful. Funnily enough, this song is played during Light's moments as a student, or when he is trying to deceive someone into thinking he is a hardworking, conscientious student, and not Kira. His second theme is titled Kira's theme. Light's true self is Kira, so this theme has a lower tone, it sounds sinister. It has none of the hopeful sound of his first theme. The anime is excellently scored. There are multiple examples of purposeful composing within each of the characters' themes. The music of Death Note has been a consistent addition to my studying playlist. It really does evoke feelings of intelligence and being lost in analytical thought. Even with all of this praise, Death Note is not free from having some flaws. In my opinion, Death Note takes a dip in quality at the halfway mark of the series. There is a noticeable decline. The original intent was to only have the series run for half of its length. The duo of Takeshi Obata and Tsugomi Ohba were convinced to continue the story due to the increasing popularity of Death Note during its serialization. Death Note also doesn't follow a clear-cut direction when it comes to its story that it establishes. Instead, it follows a sequence of mind games played out one after the other, with the story and some aspects of characterization taking a hit as a result of it. However, this was totally intentional on Tsugomi Ohba's part. He has mentioned that he intentionally drew out the entertaining mind games of the series, which kept the series fun and engaging. By focusing less on the human drama and ideological aspects of the series, he made sure that Death Note was not bogged down by these aspects. He does say that if Death Note was serialized and targeted to mature audiences only, then he would have included more of the character drama and backstories which Death Note lacks. The series doesn't lack character development. Light's character development is seen through the mind games that he plays with L, how they become even more sinister and riskier. Through the mind games, you see his initial good intentions become evil. He goes from a conscientious student to a psychopath. You even learn a lot about L's character that is never stated through the questionable risks that he takes when he sets up his own psychological traps that he hopes Kira will fall into. To be overrated is to have more praise than is deserved. Does Death Note fall into this category? In my opinion, absolutely not. Aside from the minor nitpicks I mentioned earlier, for me the series excels in every aspect from beginning to end. I have tried to remain concise and as spoiler-free as possible. I assume most people watching this type of video will have already seen Death Note, but on the off chance you have not, then I hope that this has helped to convince you that it is worth your time. Even if you have seen Death Note and it's been a while, then I ask you to revisit the series. You may just like me pick up something you did not notice the first time round. This always happens whenever I go back and rewatch this series.